Well, hello there, my friends. I am incredibly excited to be here today, and I'm bringing my dear friend and mentor, Bonnie Christine, on with me today. And I'll give everybody just a minute or two to join us before we jump into this live Q&A together. But I always love to, first of all, say how incredibly grateful I am to have this community to talk to and to have the opportunity to bring Bonnie on to talk to us about her journey and her incredible course, the Surface Design Immersion, that's open for enrollment now. So what I love to do first is I always love to do a sound check. So let me just see. I see people coming on. Ecamm's having an issue where you can't see people's names at the moment. So let me go onto my phone really quickly just to make sure that I can actually say hi to people by name.
That is happening with me too, and it's I can't figure out what's happening.
Yes, so it is a known problem by Ecamm Live. There's Tracy Diamond and Pauline Riley, and Doreen is here. She found us. And so, okay, this is awesome. This is totally, totally awesome. So give us like a sound check, like a little thumbs up, a little heart, something like that, so that we know you guys can hear us okay. And we'll get started. So first of all, I always, so Carrie James just joined. We're getting thumbs up and hearts. I think we're good to go. Okay. So I always like to start from a place of amazing gratitude because Bonnie, Christine, I would not be sitting where I am right this minute if I had not found you 4 years ago. And so I love to start with this story because many people who might be watching this might think that you were you had this artistic career forever, right? You look kind of like an artist, and so people might think that you started out as an artist, but I found you, and I so appreciated the loving nature that you have, your inner nature. I also love the way you teach. I just felt this amazing, I want to hug you whenever I see you, and basically continue to learn from you every year. So what I wanted to do was also just start maybe first with your family, because I don't think that people know where you live in the world, a little bit about your family, and then we'll get more into the business side.
Well, yeah, I love that question. I don't get that one very often. So I am married to a wonderful guy named David, and we met and fell in love in high school, actually. And so we've been married for 13 years, and we have two small kids. Their names are Bear and Ollie. So they are 7 and 5, little boy and little girl. And we live in a really small town in the mountains of North Carolina. And that's one thing that, this career has really allowed us to do because, I talk about location freedom a lot. And sometimes people are really drawn to location freedom because they like to travel the world, and sometimes they just want the freedom of being able to work from wherever. And for me, those two things are true, but also I really wanted to be able to live in this tiny little town that there's not a lot happening, but both of our parents live in the same town, and we really wanted to try to raise our children in the same town that their grandparents are in. And so it's just been, really an incredible blessing to be able to do that. And so, I've built this business. I've built this career with tiny children. And so I understand. I have lots of mamas that come into my community, and, they're worried about the time and being able to homeschool or have children at the same time. And I'm like, this is why this is so beautiful, because you get to do it alongside your children. And I also think doing something that you love and letting your children see you do something that you love and express your creativity and make artwork, like what an incredible thing to allow your children to witness.
It's also true. Yes, it's also true. And of course, I'm 63 and I think you're 35 or something like that. So we're about 30 years apart, right? And one of the things that, I think is really important for people to also understand is even in or especially in my age group, a lot of us have grandchildren who we want to also sort of show that creativity and being an artist is, in fact, a fabulous career path. So take us back a little bit to this question around. I don't think people know that you actually went to business school and you haven't been an artist your whole life. So tell us that story.
Yeah, and I love what you shared there too, because what about showing your grandchildren that it's never too late to chase after a dream and to learn something new? You know, my mom took the immersion course and she's 64. And, you know, I think that it proved to her that she could still learn something all new. And I don't know if many people need to hear that, because to me, I'm like, of course you can. But I think to her, it was absolutely like proving to herself that it wasn't too late to shift gears and try something new and learn something that a lot of people like. It's, you know, it takes a lot of effort to learn. Okay, so yes, I am not a traditional artist. I went, but I have always been creative. And so my story kind of is that I grew up in my mom's quilt shop. She had a brick and mortar quilt shop, and I was always in there. We sewed growing up and painted, and my mom is just creative to the core. And so we used to always do kind of arts and crafts. But I wasn't an artist. I didn't have, you know, sketchbooks and regular art practice. And so I knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I come from a family of entrepreneurs, but I was the first one in my family to go to college. And so I decided to go to business school because I felt like that would probably give me the most versatility. And it wasn't until after I graduated, this was in 2008 or something like that. And it wasn't until after that that I really decided that I wanted to be a fabric designer. And spent some time kicking myself for not going to design school. Felt like I had wasted an opportunity with my education. And then I thought, you know what? It's not a wasted opportunity. I can use what I've learned and I can learn more. And so I just kind of set out to learn this industry. It took me a long time. It took me 2 years to learn. This was in 2009, 2010. And so no one was teaching. And it seemed like very much things were kind of held close to the chest in this industry. And so I kind of tripped and fell my way through it and piecemealed things together from every corner of the internet. And what it did was it worked. It's possible, but I wasted a lot of time learning things that I didn't need to necessarily learn, trying to figure out what I needed to learn next, and just really tripping over my own 2 feet, really. And so, you know, that's part of why I came out of the other side really wanting to share and wanting to kind of streamline this process and bringing clarity to the steps and the process, so that other people wouldn't have to do kind of the same thing that I went through. So.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that this leads really beautifully in. So, first thing, Susan Palmer wants to know what the board is behind you. And is that the names of the people who've joined Immersion so far?
Yes, we're a little bit behind.
It's
We have some
so It's so beautiful, Bonnie. It's such a beautiful. I mean, this is just another example of how you celebrate, right? The fact that people
Yeah.
are making this investment in themselves, but then you do it in a really, really beautiful and unique way. It's gorgeous. And I'm sure you're way behind. I'm sure you're way behind in terms of writing them all out, but show us a couple.
We're working on it today, but yeah, for every person who joins the course, I pause and I write their name on a piece of paper, and we pin it up to the board. So I'll leave the board up through the whole course. I'll probably do all my Q&As here because every single person is really special, and they have a big dream and a big goal on their heart, and they are seen and they're heard and they are lifted up by me and by my support team and by the community. And so it's really important to me to really take the time to just acknowledge every single beautiful soul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I also want to make sure that everyone watching, whether you're watching us live or you're watching the replay, the link to join immersion is up at the top. It's in the description of this video. And so you can just click through. You'll click a link to my bonus experience, and then there's an enrollment button on that page that takes you actually into Bonnie's sales page where you can pick your payment option and join us. But one of the things I wanted to get back to, Bonnie, is this sense of abundance, right? So one of the things that, and of course, I'm always taking notes because I wanted to make sure I don't forget to ask you these super important questions. So I think that a lot of people can be sitting here listening to us and they have this fear that they're just not going to be able to do it, or that there is too much competition, or especially in my kind of cohort, it's like, oh, my ship has sailed. I'm too old. I'm not going to be able to do this. So can you talk a little bit about, you have an incredibly powerful way of thinking about abundance, the abundant mindset. Can you share that with us?
I would love to. Yeah, so that goes a ways back to really when I decided to teach, because I got a little bit of kickback when I started teaching because people felt like I was just creating more competition for myself, which is really like where the industry was several years ago, was why would you want to create more competition for yourself? And in that moment, I just really identified the difference between running your whole life, but especially your business, from a place of fear as opposed to a place of abundance. And so anytime I'm making a decision and I can identify that I'm making that decision out of a place of fear, I check myself. I'm like, well, what is a different way that I could approach this with a mindset of abundance? And this single mindset shift has done so much for me and my business over the years and my life. So, all the way down to, should I share my work? I'm afraid it's going to get copied. I'm afraid it's going to get stolen. And I'm like, that decision is out of a fear-based mindset rather than an abundance-based mindset, because, so what if it gets stolen? I probably won't, but if it did, I can create more work, or I can deal with, what happened there because I have steps in place. And so that is just really, in turn, this was not the intention, but in turn, what that has done is really inspire that entire community to also have a mindset of abundance and not of competition. And so what has happened is that this community of students, they share so abundantly, and they are never afraid of helping someone else out or creating competition. And so the whole community just lifts each other up and shares incredible resources and feedback for each other. And it's just been a real honor to be on this side of all of it. So
Yes, and what's wonderful too is that when people go to your to the beautiful immersion page, they can. There's first of all, there's incredible information on there about everything that they get in the immersion course, but then there's also the celebration section, and there's such incredible stories. And what that has always helped me with personally as I continue on my career path, and is every single person is unique. And so every name that's behind you on that board, and all the names to come, because enrollment's still open for a week, it closes next Tuesday, is an individual person who's going to embrace what they want to get out of Surface Design and how they want to put their work out into the world. And when you think about it, I mean, many of us have never even heard of Surface Design before in terms of the actual term, but when you live your life and you look around you, there are patterns everywhere. So it's an infinite universe of possibility in terms of what you decide you want to put your work on, or which companies you might want to get licensed with, or the unique path you want to take. So I highly encourage people who are watching to go through the link that's at the top of this video and explore those stories, because you will see yourself in those stories. And it will really, I think, both inspire and motivate you to start this journey yourself, because as you know, my tagline is, it's never too late to create.
too late to create. So I have a lot of students who fall into this category, and so many of them do a lot of different things. So if you go over to the Celebrate page, you can scroll to look at images of people, but you can also search the page, because there's like 200 stories on that page. So if you search that page for something like experience, or if you search for the word old, and let me tell you why, because people will say like, I'm 55 years old, or I'm 71 years
Yeah.
old.
Yeah.
Bring up those stories. And so I love this. My mom is a great example, and of course you are too, Anne. But my mom, after she took immersion, what she did was she sold her brick and mortar shop. She was tired of working 9 to 5. She was tired of having inventory. She was tired of having employees, but she didn't see a way out. And so she took this course, and she used her skill set to start. She's a quilter to her bones. And so what she did was learn how to design her own quilting patterns. And she now has an online membership with hundreds of members from all over the world. And she designs a sewing pattern every month, and then she teaches them how to create the project and learn how to quilt through her membership. And it's allowed her to work from home. I mean, this happened really just before the pandemic. And so it was an incredible kind of thing that she had just done, which completely saved her. It allowed her to pivot in a time that so many of us really needed to pivot.
Yeah, no, it's just an incredible example. So people definitely need to go through. You got to get to the Celebrate page, and then you can search for pretty much any term and then find stories that apply. It's just it's really, really inspiring. So inspiring. So one of the things I'd like to ask you about is that you are this incredibly fabulous combination of creative artist, but also kind of math nerd or productivity nerd, right? And not for lack of a better description. And I love this about you. So one of the things that you are so, I feel so blessed to continue to learn this from you is how we achieve our goals and how we put one foot in front of the other. So talk to us about this, this productivity and do the work mentality that you really help us with.
Yeah, so 11 years into my business, and I've learned a lot specifically about time management and workflow and achieving big goals. And I love this part of what I do because it's not something that I ever set out to do, but I've learned from myself, and I've learned from seeing other people implement it. And so it's kind of transitioned into, like, I talk about time management workflow all the time. I've got a planner that helps. And so the reason why this very first started is because when I decided I wanted to be a fabric designer, I could not have been further from being a fabric designer. I had no art practice. I didn't even know what program I needed to use. I had no insight into the industry. I didn't have an online platform. I didn't have a business. Okay. So I was just literally a small town girl with just, a big dream. And that felt so big and overwhelming that what it did was completely stop my progress. I didn't even get started because I didn't know how. I didn't know how to get started. And I don't know if you agree, but to me, like, starting something that feels big is always the hardest part. And if you just start, things do start to fall into place. And so I ended up letting 6 months go by. And I woke up one morning and I'm like, I have this dream. I've been telling people that this is what I want to do. Yet for 6 months, I have done literally nothing but feel overwhelmed by it. Like, I've not made any progress. So that day I made a promise to myself that I would start doing one thing every single day in efforts of moving me, like incrementally inching me towards getting closer to this dream. And I am the type of person who, if I make that commitment, I see it through, and I didn't miss a day. Now, that doesn't mean that some days I wasn't like crawling in the bed and I thought, oh no, I didn't do my thing. And I got back out and I researched for 5 minutes and I checked that box off. But other days it was hours and hours spent on, accomplishing this. And it started with research. It started just figuring out what I needed to learn. And then when I figured out what I needed to learn, I spent time learning it. And it just very organically unfolded. And then at the end of 18 months, I accomplished my biggest goal. I got my first contract licensing my artwork for a fabric collection. And this moment in time changed me. It's like before this and after this, because I had never had something so impossible become possible in my life. And it proved to me that I could accomplish really hard, big things. And because it had been such a journey, it made me know that anyone else could also do that. And then, so that was kind of my productivity, and then time management didn't really come into play until I started having children. And so all of a sudden my time was significantly squished, and I had to figure out how to accomplish the same amount of stuff in much less time. And that kind of refined my approach to working and how I focus on time management. And, we don't have to get into that, but it's kind of refined over the years to becoming something that I'm really passionate about.
Yeah, and I think, listen, I think the most important message for people to hear, and so I love to borrow this phrase from my dear friend Amy Porterfield, which is, if you're multitasking, come back to us, because it's doing something each day, right? So one of my favorite expressions of yours, Bonnie, is it only takes 10 seconds of courage. And it's true. You have to commit to yourself to do the work, right? Because it's not just going to fall into your lap. Anything that is a big dream, a big goal, is going to take effort. And however, if you break it down into baby steps like you do in the immersion course, and the support that you provide during the 8 weeks of the course helps us make those decisions to commit to ourselves and to do the work and to make progress. And each step along the way gets us further and further. The other thing that you say that I love is, don't think about step 800. Don't think about step 800, right? Just think about step 2. If you're on step 1, think about step 2. And I think that really helps a lot with managing the overwhelm.
I think also, so many times we kind of do the same thing every day. We do our routine. We know what we have to accomplish. We're doing a job, or we're doing the same thing in a day. And honestly, even if it is something that's big and you find difficult to learn, maybe, it feels so good to be on a mission. Like, it feels so good to put in the hard, really see like a tremendous outcome and tremendous progress. It's exciting. And so as long as this took me like those 2 years, it's some of the best 2 years ever of my whole life, because I was on a mission. I had my head down. I was doing the work, and it was deeply creative and so incredibly rewarding. So to this day, I love it when I have kind of a new big goal and I am going for it, and it just feels really special.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to switch gears and ask a couple of questions that actually came through earlier today. And one of them is advice on how to draw. That, when you were looking at the blank page, what advice do you have about just, how to draw? And tell us what you would say.
Well, absolutely. To be a surface pattern designer, you don't have to be an artist like you might think. I think that you do need to be creative, and I think you do need to have an eye for visually, like composition, like putting things together. Like, for instance, I used to love designing like my mom's page, like PDFs for the quilt shop. Like, I used to love to like put those together, and now, so long ago, I can see, I was like, you've always loved this. You just didn't know what to do with it. So many professional designers are famous for their doodles, their scribbles, their sketchy work. There are a lot of different ways that you can create art. And so part of what we cover in immersion is absolutely starting from pencil and pen and paintbrush, but we also cover how to take photographs yourself and then use your own photographs to trace over. We also talk about how to scan in different types of items like leaves. So let me show you a couple of examples. This print is a really good example of, can you see that?
Yes, we can see it. It's beautiful.
Lots of different things. So basically the green stem work I drew with a pen. The yellow flowers I painted with a paintbrush. And then the green leaves that are back here, I literally scanned leaves from my yard, and I turned them into vectors and used them in this print. This one is one of my favorites. So this is from
Oh,
a
it's
collection.
beautiful.
This is from a collection called Her and History. And now that's a play on words for her and his story. And I was really inspired to do this collection after I lost three of my grandparents in about a year. And so these are both of them kept a journal and one of them wrote recipes. And so this is actually scans from my great grandfather's journal and pages of my grandmother's recipe book. And I was able to make that into fabric, which is just really, really special. This was from 1918, this journal entry. So
1918. Wow. That's fantastic.
really, 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 really special. And so, I also have a lot of so typically they're women who are in my class, so I talk about women a lot. The women who come into my course that are 60 plus, a lot of them have different missions. Some of them have an entire second career that comes to life, and they fully support themselves and their families through a career. Some of them want to do it as kind of like a side income. They don't want a second career. They just want some income and doing something that they love. And
Is
then
that you
some
or
of
me
them,
beeping?
it's me, and I just turned it off. I'm sorry.
No, no worries. No worries.
And then some of them just want to have fun. And so a lot of the women come in and they'll take their grandchildren's artwork and they'll create fabric out of their grandchildren's artwork and, make gifts for them. They order fabric on Spoonflower and do pajamas and all sorts of things from the artwork that the people in their lives are making. So there's just lots and lots of options.
There are lots and lots of options, and this is actually a really great segue into sort of two topics. One is Adobe Illustrator and how Adobe Illustrator has opened incredible doors for both you and for me, and that even people who have used the program, it runs the gamut from people who've never opened the program to people who've been using it for 30 years. And one of the things I think is truly unique about the immersion course is you don't just teach us how to use Illustrator tactically. You actually show us your workflow. And
Yeah.
so tell us just a little bit more about that, because I think that again and again you hear from people who have used Illustrator and they said, I don't know if I should buy your course because I've used Illustrator. I don't really need to learn that. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
and then they do come into the course and they tell us, oh my gosh, I never would have thought to use it that
You know,
way.
it seems like it seems funny to say like this course was built for absolute beginners and advanced. But it's what we hear from the students. And so again, over on the Celebrate page, you'll hear from students who open the program for the very first time with me in lesson number 1. And then you'll hear from many students who they did go to school for graphic design and they've been using this program for 20 years. And if that's you, I still beg of you to watch every single lesson, because the refinement that happens with the little nuances of the program and how you really refine your workflow and pick up new tools and tricks and tips and keyboard shortcuts, that's really the overwhelming feedback is, wow, I thought I knew this program and I didn't have the refinement of the workflow. And then for those who are opening the program for the very first time, we truly start at the basics and we just build on each other in bite-sized pieces. And I think one of the reasons why it resonates with people so much is that I never set out to be an Adobe Illustrator teacher. That was not my plan. And I set out to be a Surface pattern designer. And so my workflow is refined specifically for creating illustration work and repeating patterns in Illustrator. And so I'm just able to really, rather than just teach the program and all the tools, I'm really able to kind of unfold the process that happens when you're doing design work like this. And it seems to resonate and stick with people much easier.
So I'd love to talk a little bit about color. And in particular, I love how your face, your face lights up when we talk about color. So you just have talk to us about color. How do you get inspired by color? So how did you pick, for example, the colors to use for the names of the people in the course? Because it's so beautiful. So tell us a little bit of
Okay.
that story.
You know,
And if you have more show and tell, people love show and tell. So if you have more
oh, I've
patterns you
got
want to
so
show
much.
us,
If you
please
knew everything
share.
that I had right here, it's
Yes,
just overwhelming.
please
Um,
share.
okay, so this is the thing, and I don't know if this is going to excite people or disappoint them, but I'm not a color theorist. I don't really even know color theory. I know like my gut, and I'm inspired by just what I like to see. And so I will kind of go down rabbit holes. I do have a pretty, I don't always use the same color palette, but I do kind of always use a similar like mood of colors. And they tend to be very vintage, very like subdued.
Can
I'm
you
sorry.
move that? Oh, move that over the other. There you go. Perfect. Oh my gosh. So first of all, tell us a little bit more about this one because this one has did these roses come from your garden also? This is another one where you use multiple techniques to pull it together, right?
Good. Yep. This is a mixture of working off of photographs and pattern work because these are actually like cross stitch X's in there. These are photos from my grandmother's garden. And so this is part of the Her in History collection because my grandmother was a big time gardener. I have to move. I have to
Oh,
move
that's beautiful. Oh, that's
opposite
so
direction today.
wow, that is so beautiful, Bonnie. It's incredible and very, very. And so this is also a great time for you to tell us more about your. I mean, I want to stick with color for a few minutes, but I also want to talk about collections. And so that is one of your signature patterns that's on your beautiful journal, right? The ferns.
Yeah.
Oh, oh God, so gorgeous. Just gorgeous.
Yeah. So collections are what we eventually get to in the course. That's in module 4. And so by the time that you understand creating artwork, and then, oh, I have to show this one. It's one of my favorites. That way.
That is one of my favorites. I think that is the one that I bought from you like 3 or 4 years ago as a photography. Remember when you sold straps for people's cameras?
Yes.
Yeah, so
I also have some like embroidered patches. So these are iron-on patches. And
fabulous.
we're talking about fabric, but there are so many different things. This is an enamel pen that
Oh, that's
I have.
beautiful. Yeah, so there's so many different applications. It's not just all about fabric. There's so many different applications.
This is washi
Washi
tape. I love
tape.
that. Oh, and packing tape. Packing tape.
Yeah, and wallpaper, of course.
Wallpaper back here. Tissue paper. So many things. So I really teach designing in collections. So we'll start with Illustrator. We'll start in learning how to create art. Then we'll start to learn how to just create repeating patterns. But then we really focus on designing in collections. So a collection would be something between 8 and 12 prints. And these prints really tell a story and they play off of each other and they work together to create one cohesive, breathtaking collection. And so one of the ways that I'm really passionate about collections is in the telling of the story. So I like to make my work really personal, and I always base collections off of a story, a memory. This is part of a collection called The Open Road. And so this, it's wrinkly. I needed to iron it. This is was based off of after my little family. We bought an old Airstream and we renovated it and we set out on the open road and we did the whole kind of United States in about 10 weeks. This was about 3 years ago. And so this print, I gathered inspiration and I designed on the road, and this print is kind of all the states that we drove through and saw different things. And so it can be something big, like a big story like that, or it can be something more subtle, but at least there is a common theme, a common thread that runs through the entire collection. And it makes your work deeply personal. And then I also think that it very much resonates with the end consumer, the end viewer, in a much more personal way too.
So did you save any of those incredible pictures from that journey that you posted? Because you posted some on Instagram. So are they like in one of your cute little bubbles? Because the Airstream's called Marjorie, right? Isn't her name
Yes,
Marjorie? And she's
yes.
beautiful. And when you first bought her and like renovated her, you did some incredible, I think, Instagram stories, or maybe you saved
Yeah.
them as highlights. Um,
They are in my highlights, so I won't try to pull them up right now, but they're in my highlights on Instagram. There's also a hashtag called Miss Marjorie. Miss
oh,
Marjorie.
sweet.
So Marjorie, this is not relevant, but the story is that we found the Airstream is a 62, I think, 1962, and we found the original purchase papers. And in 1962, there was Marjorie was the original owner, so we named it after her.
I love it. I love it. And listen, it is part of this story, right? It's both part of what makes you you, and it also is part of what inspires you. And I think that what I have found is so inspiring, and also what I want to inspire in others who are watching and are still on the fence about joining immersion, is that we all have a richness in our life. And it's an opportunity for us to lean into the rich tapestry of our lives, even more so for those of us who are in our 60s, and bring that into our artwork in a way that is really not only brings us incredible joy, but is really, really unique.
Absolutely.
So talk to us a little bit about how you so there's something that you've mentioned before about the use of negative space. And
Yeah.
I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that, because I do think it's important as
Yeah.
part of someone's creative journey as they're developing their style.
Okay, so this is like no negative space up there. And when I first started designing, now I look back at my collections and I'm like, whoa, that is so overwhelming. Like everything was so busy. There was no place for the eye to rest. And so one of the ways to really make a collection more cohesive and pleasing to the eye is to build in negative space. And so we do this through things like Blender prints, but also in prints like this one, this would be all of the negative space in here. Sorry,
Yep, you're
there.
pointing in the right place. Yep, you're pointing in the right place. Like the negative space in between where the recipe is and where yeah, it's
So
beautiful.
otherwise, if I had just crammed all of the writing into every open space, then this would have not had any breathing room. So negative space is like breathing room. And I do typically tend to be on the a little bit more busy side of things. Like my prints, I typically do kind of fill in every nook and cranny. Um, so when I do that, I make sure that I couple that with a print that has a little bit more breathing space.
Yeah,
Okay,
beautiful.
so it takes the busyness down a little bit, just to really, my goal when I end with a pattern and a collection is for someone's eye to really dance around the whole thing and not get distracted by too much busyness, or not for it to be overwhelmed, or not to be distracted by something like you know, sometimes motifs or repeats can kind of stick out like a sore thumb. So part of what I really teach is how to make all of those things flow beautifully.
Fantastic. So, one question that I also have for you is I would love to know kind of what a typical day looks like for you. And I want to ask this sort of in two ways. One is I'm sure you don't really have a typical day because none of us necessarily have a typical day. But when you're not actually teaching immersion, because when you're teaching immersion, your days look very different. And I'd love for you to talk about that too, because the amount of support and engagement is freaking amazing. But when you're not actually in immersion, tell us, because you know this career has allowed you to have this amazing amount of time time freedom, location freedom, like you can go on the road and you can still design from the road, and financial freedom. But tell us a little bit more about the time component and how important that's been as your children have gotten older, and also as your business has grown, so you've had more things pulling you in all directions.
Yeah, and I think one of the most exciting things is that almost no 2 days look alike. But I do have a routine that even though I'm not necessarily doing the same thing 2 days in a row, I have a routine that I, typically do every day. And so that routine is during the school year that, I wake up around 7, I get my kids off to school by 8, and then I go work out every day. So I work out 5 to 6 times a week. And this, I don't talk about this very often, but it's a different kind of like stimulation for my mind. It's like one of the only times during my day where I'm not thinking about, work or really anything. I just kind of do it for myself. And I think that's probably why I don't talk about it very often, because it just seems like a very, not selfish in a bad way, selfish in a good way, like a very selfish thing that I do for me that feels really good. And I believe that it makes my mind stronger for the rest of the day. So I always start my day that way. I get to work by 10:30. I'm out. I'm, literally working by like 11. So that's a pretty relaxed morning. And then I will work in time blocks typically. So I try to identify like the 3 top things that I want to accomplish that day. I have a to-do list, and I can kind of waste the whole day working on things that are important, but they're not necessarily really moving me into like the big goals that I have. So I identify 3 top things that I want to accomplish that day, and I make sure to do them first, and then I'll fill in the negative space with the other little to-dos like checking on Instagram or responding to emails. And then I try to wrap up by about 4, because that's when my kids are done with school. So they get home around 4, so I can be with them. Transition. I do a hard transition from business back to family. Of course, some days I work past that, and especially, weeks like this week and next week, where we have a lot going on, I'll put in some extra hours. But then I'll take some extra hours off. So it does allow us to travel. Now, we haven't traveled much at all since, it's been about a year now.
Right. None of us have. None of us have. Right.
Right. Yeah. But during the summer, especially, I can take more time off. I can work from home. I actually, and haven't shared this publicly, but this past summer, we bought a lake house. We bought a second house that's about 45 minutes away from our home. And it has been, such a saving thing for our family, because it's another safe place to go and get us out of the house without us traveling. If my husband had his way, he would travel like year round. So not being able to travel has been really hard on him. And this has just been an incredible addition, because then we can go there. I can still work because I can work from anywhere. And it's just been a really fun way to transition. So, yeah.
So are you now, so you used to work in a space inside your home, right? But
Yeah.
you, I think last year or maybe the year before, were able to actually create a new office, kind of a new beautiful studio space for yourself. And does your mom
Yeah.
have part of that space? Tell us a little bit about that beautiful
Yeah.
space, because that you're sitting in right now.
Yeah, I'll show you around a little bit. I got a camera here. So this is my studio. This is downtown in the little place that I live, and I've got cabinets over here.
Yep.
But this is one of about 5 rooms that we have, and it's a studio in our downtown. That decision was twofold. One, where I actually live has terrible internet, and I don't know how I survived there for as long as I did. But the second thing was that my kids started going to school about almost 2 years ago. And so when they went to school, and then I was just home with terrible internet with no reason to be home, like, I gotta get out of here with, like, I can leave at the same time they leave and then come home at the end of the day. But I did stay home and work because they were there. And so even though maybe I was working I was there. If there was a boo-boo, I stopped what I was doing and I ran to take care of them. Or if it was nap time, I was there to put them down or fix them lunch. And that does mean lots of interruptions, but that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted, was to be fully available and present and still do what I love. So yeah, the big transition came when they really went to school, and I'm like, I don't really need to be here anymore. And it felt a little weird to be in my house with nobody else there.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
kids. So
Well, I love also the fact that you figured out a solution that's near you where you can still be in a different environment because my husband and my son, who's now home from college, hoping to get a job, he graduated in the middle of the pandemic last year, so he didn't have his graduation celebration. So, but he's doing great, and we're very grateful to have him home. It's lovely to have him home. He's 24, and his life is just beginning. His new journey is beginning. But we
does
have
he
not.
does he still snuggle with you?
He does. He does. He. There was a large period where that was no longer there was no longer any allowed. But now that he's 24 and he's in the place that he's in as a young man, he's like, he can give me hugs and stuff, and it's lovely. It's lovely. It's really, really lovely.
A
And
lot, a lot of my day is taken up by snuggling, and I can't stand thinking about
yeah,
it.
yes, exactly. And so, but we haven't left the house. I mean, literally, we haven't done any travel. We haven't left the house since February or March of last year, coming up on a year. And so I love the idea of you just, you found a safe place, you can go there, and then at least it's a little bit of a change of scenery. You don't have quite as much cabin fever. So tell me something, Bonnie, as you go through this week, when people are making the decision about whether they're going to make the investment in immersion or not, what are some of the key things that come up over and over again that you can share with us to help people know that this is, in fact, the right investment for them to make? And to, of course, not wait until next year since you only offer immersion once a year.
Yeah. It's a weird thing to be on my side of this because I can't help you. And honestly, I can't help you change your life unless you make this commitment. But at the same time, I don't ever want to be selling this. This is an opportunity that I'm inviting you to take if you want. I'm not going to pitch it hard. I'm not going to try to convince you. What I'm going to tell you to do is follow your intuition. And if your intuition says this is not the right time, this is not the right investment, then follow that. But if your intuition feels like this could be an incredible thing, then follow that intuition. The course of the price, the the price of the course is incredibly reasonable for what it is. And so you have to look at it from a very specific perspective because there are so many students who come through the course and they have also paid $30,000 to $50,000 to go to art school. And they very plainly tell me that they learned more that they didn't even need art school. They learned everything they needed to learn in this 8-week course. And I think that that's really incredible, number one. But number two is that, this course will teach you everything that you need to know and truly nothing that you don't need to know. And I think that that's worth quite a lot too, because at this point in my life, time is honestly the biggest commodity. Like time is the thing that I want more of. Time is what I want more of with my children. Like time is really my currency now. And I think at some point in all of our lives, we really begin to understand that. And so how much time will this save me if you commit and just let someone guide you through what you need to learn as opposed to trying to kind of piecemeal it together on your own. So that's kind of where those are the two questions that we get a lot is has to do with kind of time and commitment.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that the other question that comes up a lot on my end is that what we started the conversation with, which is that, I'm not an artist, or can I really learn Illustrator? My goodness, it seems so overwhelming. And I think that certainly listen, I didn't think I could do it either before I took the leap. And yet I felt like I felt like I was ready to both invest in myself and I wanted to find my peeps. And so, one of the things that I told a story about on Instagram last week was my personal story of feeling like, I'd lost my identity when I lost my corporate job. I thought I would retire from my corporate job. And so, my whole identity was that job. It was the salary I had, it was the staff I had, it was the travel I did, blah, blah, blah. And I thought I would have the gold watch. And so when I lost my job, I was super depressed and I kept trying to get another job. But I was, in my late 50s. And then, my husband said, listen, just take the time to explore your creativity. You have this box of supplies in the basement you've never used. They're gathering dust. And so we should either throw them away or you should use them. And I found you, Bonnie, and I have to say, and I'm going to get super emotional about it, but I found you, Bonnie, and I felt like I had found both my soulmate. I also felt like I had found my mentor, even though you're 30 years younger than me. And I felt like you could hold my hand and you could help me find a new life, find a new path, find joy again, and share what I had to offer to this world that had always been sublimated. I grew up in a family that was just a corporate family. There were no examples of people who had a creative outlet. And I am so full of joy every day now, Bonnie. And cannot wait to go through the course with you again. And of course, I would love for as many people who want to join us as possible because it's transformational. It's transformational. So tell us just a little bit also about the surprises in store for people, because there are always surprises that you don't tell us about. And so I don't want you to give them all away. Because I don't even know what some of them are this year, but there are always surprises. Tell us just a little bit about what will week one feel like when we get started?
Well, first of all, just that makes me a bit emotional too. And just you are incredible and your story is so impactful, and I'm so happy for what you've been able to accomplish, and just to think that I had even a small puzzle piece to do with that is it's why I do what I do. It's so incredibly meaningful to me. So thank you for sharing that. There are surprises. I love surprises. I love making things fun. Last year we kept the bonus modules a surprise. This year, they're so good that I decided to go ahead and tell people what they are. So the bonus modules are over on the immersion course page, and they're really good. So
they're really good. They are really, really good. And one question that came up was, well, Anne, you're also offering bonuses, so do we only get one or the other? And it's like, no, you get them all. You get everything that Bonnie is offering, and then my little extra support.
So I teach the core immersion course. I teach the whole thing, but there are certain things that layer in and coincide beautifully with the course, and those are what we call the bonus modules. They will apply to most of you, but maybe not all of you, and that's why they're not part of the core curriculum. They're also taught by guests. So the first bonus is by Bearbell Dressler, and she is this incredible historian and also surface designer, and she pulls inspiration from history. And so she tells us the history of surface design and also how we can pull inspiration from a historical perspective. The second bonus is by Jenna Blackburn. All the bonuses are taught by alumni. The second one is by Jenna, and so she's teaching Procreate and Adobe Illustrator for the iPad. Now, this is a bonus because you don't have to have an iPad to either take the course or be successful, but many of you do have iPads, and so we try to cater to that as well. The third one is, again, for the iPad by Elena Wilkin on Adobe Draw. I missed one. Megan Rader has a brand new bonus this year on gesture drawing. Yes. So typically I don't teach how to draw. We give tons and tons of examples, but there's no drawing techniques. She's teaching gesture drawing on how to really draw figures, people, flowers using this technique, and it's incredible. So that's pencil and paper, the whole bonus. We also have Stacy Bloomfield of Gingiber teaching how to leverage your art and really stretch your income with every single piece of art that you have. And then another new one is by Kylie Bennett, and she's coming in during the Creative Entrepreneurship bonus module to talk to us about the importance of an email list and how to design what we call an opt-in and how to start growing your business with an email list. We also have guest experts who are going to be joining us. Those are a surprise.
Okay, cool. Excellent.
And then all the students
go ahead.
Getting student packets. So we actually send you something in the mail, and that has 6 surprises plus one big surprise on the 6th surprise in there.
Awesome. Awesome. And then so of course, one of the things I was also sharing sort of in the lead up to when enrollment was open were the pictures of us together at your in-person retreats. And for those of you guys who are watching, if you're watching live or watching the replay, whenever Bonnie does anything, I'm all in. I'm all in. And so your first retreat was like, I think 4 years ago in that beautiful Round Top, Texas location. Then we did it closer to, I think, where you live in South Carolina or North Carolina. I can't remember which. Then last year, of course, it had to be virtual. But you must have one this year too, right? Are you going to do one this year?
Yeah, so it's called Immersion Live. It's going to be virtual again. This year for sure. And it is, you as a student, you have the ability to purchase a ticket to that as well. You have the opportunity to get a little bit of a discount on that ticket during the checkout process, but you don't have to decide then. You can always come back and buy a ticket later, but it's in October. And it's basically 2.5 days where I bring in experts from every corner of the world to talk to us about surface design. And it comes about 6 months after we finish the course, like five-ish months. And it serves as a really nice kind of pick-me-up. After you've been through the course, you've done the work, and you're ready for a little bit of a boost.
Perfect. And so then Carrie James.
Anne, speaking of surprises, 3 of the student packets that we send out are going to have golden tickets in them. And so if you get a student packet and you get a golden ticket, you get a bunch of stuff, but one of them is a ticket to Immersion Live. And if you've already bought a ticket, we refund your money.
Yeah, fantastic. And so I was going to ask you about whether there were, I didn't want to ask if there weren't golden tickets this year, because I know you started that last year. It started like that. So super exciting. Super exciting. And then the other thing too is that you have students from all over the place, right? So you send your package all over, right? You do international shipping, because Carrie James is just asking, she said, I'm in anyway, but will you send the packet to also overseas?
We send them everywhere. Anywhere you live, we send packets.
Fantastic. So Bonnie, we only have a couple minutes left. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you would like to share with my beautiful audience?
I wasn't prepared for that question. I think you've done such a good job. I am this time of year is really special to me. And one of the reasons is because I get to connect with alumni and past students and get updates and hear stories. And it's just such an incredible, I'm just so incredibly honored to be able to have this many people have come through the course and start doing truly what they love to do. And that's my biggest mission, is for you to do whatever longs to be lived through you. And if that's surface design, come on over.
And that's a great way to end, because the community is part of the magic, right? And that's one of the things that I said about I needed to find my peeps. I needed to find people who were like me and who had this yearning to be more creative and to lean into our creativity and to realize it's not too late for us, and that we can absolutely have an incredibly joyful and fulfilling and inspirational and motivating life. And that is another incredible opportunity inside the immersion program. So you probably have another one of these sessions, I would imagine. So I'm so grateful that you were able to join me. Really, I'm incredibly grateful and so blessed. And I'm so incredibly excited to get started right away. I'm in. I can't wait. Last question. What's your mom's name?
Her name is Maxie, and her membership is called A Good Quilt.
A Good Quilt. And can we find her under a goodquilt.com or maximakes.com? What's her?
Maxie Makes. Yep, and a good quilt. You'll find her.
All right, sweet. Well, listen, I love you to the moon and back, my dear friend. I cannot wait to see you and hug you in person sometime not in the not too distant future. Thank you again. Have a great rest of your day. And as I always say in closing, I am Anne La Follette, and it's never too late to create. Bye for now, and I'll see you real soon. Bye, Bonnie.